And now, words of wisdom with Adam Carriker.
Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. Lou Holtz.
Gotta love the short former Irishman. I love him on some ESPN. Good for you for, tweeting out some Lou Holtz this morning.
I'm glad that you respect me more because I tweeted out Lou Holtz.
You saw that, did you?
I did see that.
Yes. Yes. Anytime that you can quote the Irish, I think that Irish eyes will smile upon you. Therefore, Adam, I can tell you that today, this show will be among the best in Fourth and Pain history.
And the ways that Irish eyes smile upon me mean so much to me.
Absolutely, with your Nebraska heart. But anyway,
Absolutely.
this here is Fourth and Pain, the only pro wrestling show to be hosted by an NFL player and a weight loss champion. He's Redskins defensive end Adam Carriker.
Gia.
I'm former wrestling announcer turned weight loss champion Chuck Carroll. Be sure to follow us on the Twitter at Fourth and Pain and join us each and every Sunday morning, 1067 The Fan, bright and or early 8 o'clock. And by God, how fitting is it that you started out this segment with Lou Holtz, as I believe for this week's college football installment, Adam, I want to talk about college football coaches who make it in the NFL and those that decide to remain in college. Of course, we're talking about University of Oregon coach Chip Kelly. Everybody thought he was a done deal going to the Cleveland Browns, and he says, no, I'm staying at Nike U and will remain at the University of Oregon for another season. So my question to you, seriously, having played at the elite level on both sides, college and the pros, what is the significant difference between the coaches at the NCAA level versus the coaches in the NFL level?
To be honest, I don't know if there's a whole lot of difference. Guys in college, probably they have to be able to be a little bit more able to recruit. Because you got to convince guys to come to your university. You got to convince them to come play for you. Where in the NFL, you just draft guys. And honestly, whether they want to play for you or not, they're now on your team. Usually they do because they want to be on a team and they want to be a part of the NFL. But you don't have to be able to talk to guys and convince them as much. Not saying the NFL coaches can't, but it is a major part of being a college coach. That's one of the things Nick Saban's really good at. It's one of the things that Pete Carroll was really good at USC. Every year they had a top recruiting class. Mac Brown, even though they haven't been as great at Texas lately, he gets top recruits every year.
Well, here's the thing, though. It's like you see some guys, they rise above the fray, and then other guys come up and they fizzle out. You just mentioned Nick Saban. Now, of course, you could talk locally in D.C. We could talk all day about the experiment that was Steve Spurrier. Nobody's questioning what a great, phenomenal college coach this guy is, but his fun and gun offense never was able to translate in the NFL. And so you talk about recruiting. I'm asking you more from a game planning standpoint. What is the difference? Why is it that Spurrier's offense was able to work in the college ranks, not so much in the pros?
I think in college, especially, more so now, teams have to be balanced. It used to be teams ran the triple option, or teams would pass the ball all day long. You don't see a Navy or an Air Force or an Army, these triple option teams, or a Georgia Tech playing for national championships.
Right.
They do have good seasons, and they'll go 8-4, 9-3. Georgia Tech plays for the ACC title, even though they were 6-6 this year. But I don't think you're ever going to win a national title like that because you have to be balanced on offense. The old school Nebraska days, back when they used to run the ball all day long. That's why we quit doing that. That's why we brought in Bill Callahan at Nebraska, was because it didn't work anymore when I first got there in the early 2000s. You have to be able to threaten the defense through the air and on the ground. And I think that's why you don't see Steve Spurrier running the fun and gun anymore in South Carolina. Like they have Marcus Lattimore. He's going to the pros this year, but one of the best running backs in college football. And in the NFL, you have to be able to threaten him on both sides of the ball. Back when he coached at Florida, you didn't. That was the fun and gun. That was Nebraska ground and pound all day long. But now it's grown to a point, especially in the NFL, where you have to threaten him on both sides. And another thing, when he was here, he brought in his old Florida quarterbacks, who were great college quarterbacks, but maybe didn't translate that well to the NFL. I mean, Danny Werfel, he was a Heisman Trophy winner, one of the greatest college quarterbacks of all time. I don't know how well that translated to the NFL. And he kept trying to get his old Florida quarterbacks to run and to be successful in the NFL, even though they maybe didn't fit the NFL prototype quarterback very well.
Right, and let's not forget Shane Matthews. But the interesting thing was, I will never forget, I was not able to watch his first preseason game. I believe that it was a preseason game, and I couldn't tell you for the life of me who they were actually facing, but it was played over in Japan. It was the Tokyo Bowl. You remember the first preseason of the game was held over there. And they ran up 50 some odd points against their opponent, just destroyed them. And people got swept up and carried away with the fact that despite this was preseason, holy cow, we've never seen this kind of offensive explosion in Washington before. And people thought, oh my God, Dan Snyder, what a genius going out and getting this guy. This experiment is going to work. Of course, Spurrier, he replaced Marty Schottenheimer, who finished the season, I believe, with 5 straight wins and was still shown the door. These things happen. It's the pros. But it just was never, ever, ever able to have any sort of lasting success. And so the other question that I had is, once something like that is on tape and you kind of show your hand, how easy is it for teams, then your opponents, to scout and adjust and get properly suited to defend you as quickly as possible?
Well, that was my answer to the preseason game. Basically, when you're going into the preseason, especially if it's a game one, you literally don't scout the other team at all. Like, you're aware of the players they have, you're aware of the kind of offense they run generally. But as far as scouting, I mean, the starters don't even play but maybe 10 to 15 plays or a quarter. So they're probably playing all these guys who are not prepared, are not going to be on the team, or just fighting to make the team, guys who are not starters, probably not your typical NFL players, because this guy's trying to fight and make the roster. So it was not a very good showcase. It was very misleading. And once the regular season rolled around and teams prepared for it and teams saw what they were doing, and you face the regular NFL guys, obviously it didn't work.
You're watching, listening to Fourth and Pain, the only pro wrestling show hosted by an NFL player and a weight loss champion, talking about college coaches that may or may not transition well into the NFL. The other big name out there that I want to bring up is Pete Carroll, now with the Seattle Seahawks, in his third stead now as an NFL head coach, having coached for the Jets, having coached for the Patriots. But it wasn't until he came up out of USC, takes over with the Seattle Seahawks, that he finally has that success in the National Football League. So what is it that you think is in place now in Seattle that's enabling him to have success that he didn't have in his previous 2 stints? Is it just that he's been around the block a couple of times?
Perhaps. I mean, sometimes you don't get all the right pieces. Sometimes you're not allowed to have everything you want. Maybe someone else in the organization doesn't want the same thing you want. You don't get everything that you want that's supposed to fit what your idea of football is. Another thing is, he went down to USC, and that's really when he became the big dog, when he became Pete Carroll. Right. So maybe he learned how to be successful. Not that he wasn't good before, but maybe he learned how to take it to the next level, be one of the best coaches, and that has now propelled him now that he's taken now that he's up in Seattle and he's doing so well, and he's really turned the Seahawks team around.
Now, I think that you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. I'm curious, being the Nebraska guy that you are, Tom Osborne, if having been given a shot at the pros, would he have been successful?
I think so, and here's why I will say, because when he first got to Nebraska, we used to like to throw the ball all the time. People forget about this when he first got there in the early 70s, but we lost to Oklahoma every year. And they ran the triple wishbone option back then. So that's when we started going to the ground and pound, running the option all the time. And he showed that he could go from passing the ball all the time to running the ball all the time. That's really when we became successful. And one of the biggest things you have to do, especially in the NFL, is be able to adjust and change what you can do based on your personnel of your team, and based on what teams are doing that are being successful at that present day, because football is constantly changing. Teams are constantly stealing from other teams' ideas, plays, and all this and that. So he showed the ability to do that, and I think that's huge. Now, here's my question for you.
Sure.
2 coaches. Chip Kelly, would he be a good NFL coach? Another coach, Nick Saban. If he tried it again, would he be successful this time?
I think that Nick Saban kind of has the stigma of being a college-only coach. I think that he would kind of fall under the same guise as what Steve Spurrier experienced. That's just my gut feeling talking right now.
Well, that's because things didn't go well in Miami, and he said he wasn't going to leave, and he left. But then he went to Alabama, and I mean, he's turned that thing into a major college powerhouse, because when he first got there, they weren't the Alabama of old, but now they are. Right. So you don't think he could go back a second time and maybe get different results like Pete Carroll?
I honestly don't think so. But again, that's just my gut talking.
I mean, he learned from Bill Belichick. He was part of that Cleveland staff. If you watch that, It's a Football Life, all those guys dispersed. The Kirk Ferentz, Saban, you had Bill Belichick, you had all these guys, Romeo Crennel, all those guys were part of that staff, then they dispersed. You don't think he could take what he knew from Belichick?
He may be able to, but my other question is, why would he want to leave the college ranks if he's so successful down there? Perennial national title contender. Why would he want to leave that and come up to the pros where, in my opinion, it may be even more difficult to win a Super Bowl than it is to win a national title?
Exactly.
Why in the world?
Exactly. He's won national titles. He's been there, done that. he is known as a great college coach. You don't think that college coach labeling bothers him? He wants to be known as a great coach.
But what if he loves being a college coach? That's the other thing.
Well, I don't know if he does or not. Neither do you. I mean, anybody, maybe he loves berries. I don't know. But the thing is, he wants to get rid of that college coach label. I guarantee that bothers him to this day a little bit.
The other guy that you asked about, Chip Kelly, I think, what the hell? Give him a shot. He's got a shot as anybody.
You think it would work?
I think
his quarterbacks take a lot of hits.
Well, so do the quarterbacks here in Washington, but still got a 7-win run into the playoffs. A lot of teams give up a lot of sacks, and they still have some semblance of success. I think that it could work, especially as the evolution of the mobile quarterback continues in the National Football League. That's just my humble opinion. But you're never going to know until he's given that shot. And I don't know why he didn't take that job in Cleveland. I suspect perhaps he was trying to milk Oregon out of more money, trying to get him to stay, maybe get a little bit of a contract extension. I don't really know, but I don't think that he's written off the National Football League for good just yet. But before we wrap up this segment, I want to take a look down south. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their head coach, Greg Schiano, comes from Rutgers, has all sorts of success up there, served as defensive coordinator at the University of Miami before there, gets his first taste of the pros, and yes, the Buccaneers faded somewhat down the stretch this season, but you can't tell me that the marbles aren't lining up for Tampa Bay right now.
Do marbles line up?
They do in my world, Adam Carriker. I was trying to search for
strings where they all, and then you can hit them and bam, bam, bam.
I was trying to come up with an analogy, and it wasn't coming to me. So today,
ducks in a row.
The marbles are lining up.
Ducks in a row.
Marbles are lining up.
Marbles are lining up.
I'm coining the phrase, damn it. But honestly, Greg Schiano, what's your pulse, man? We talk about the Peyton pulse. What's your pulse on Schiano?
I mean, I think he was a good coach at Rutgers. I mean, who was Rutgers before he got there?
Touche.
And all of a sudden, they were undefeated and maybe lost their last 2 games of the year. I think it was in 2007, and they had a chance to play for the national title had they won those games. And then he goes down to Tampa Bay, turns them around, and they struggled a little bit at the end. But I think he's a good coach, and I think he's got Tampa Bay headed in the right direction. So there's no doubt that he knows what he's doing, but I think he runs more of a prototypical pro-style offense where Chip Kelly is a little bit more spread out, a little bit different. I'm not saying that it can't work. I'm just saying it makes me nervous where quarterbacks are set up to take that many hits.
Well, real quick before we wrap this up, your opinion on Chip Kelly. Could he translate into a pro coach?
I think so. Just give him a shot.
All right, fair enough. We'll probably come back and revisit this. The coaching carousel always going on in the National Football League. Lots of empty chairs still to be filled. But on that note, we are fresh out of time. I'm Chuck Carroll. Thank you so very much for believing in our weirdness.
I'm Adam Carriker. Haters love me. Peace out, Fourth and Painters.